I'm here with Jason Ruona from J Concepts, who's sponsoring the Pitlane Reporter for this week. First of all, thank you very much for helping get me here to do this.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity to be here at the World Championships, and we had such a great experience and good time there in Pennsylvania, where we did the same thing for the World Nationals, that we're happy to be here for the Worlds.
We did. That was my first time actually doing Pitlane Reporting. So I've sort of found my feet a little bit, but I'm going to try to enlarge it this weekend. Go around with this whole weekend, Dave. Go around, speak to lots of people, lots of different ideas I have, things I want to talk about. I want to show not just the racers and not their pits, but I want to show the facility and talk about anything and everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people really want to see when they're tuning in here. It's obviously, when you watch this stuff online, people have a certain perspective of, what the track looks like and the size or the facility and, the surroundings, but you never really know until you're actually there and you get a feel for, how close the pits are to the track, and, maybe there's a dust storm, and, a lot of that stuff affects pits and this little inside information that I think people really like to know about that's happening, and it affects some of the, your strategies in pit area, and, anything that's out there. We had a little rain last night, and obviously they're working on the track here behind us, and it's coming together, but I suspect this is going to happen a couple times, so I think we're going to see more of this as the race goes on, and so hopefully everybody can make the adjustment and we can get the race out there and everybody's going to enjoy it.
Now, rain had been predicted, or you knew that there was a chance of rain here, looking at the photos a few weeks ago. They've done a great job to get it back to a good racing standard. But how many different variety of tires did you bring to cope with what could be a very muddy track?
Well, we probably brought 4 or 5 different tread patterns and probably around 4 or 5 different compounds, I'd say. So, you add all those together and pretty soon it becomes a pretty big number. I think overall we had to keep the numbers down a little bit because of our uncertainty with what was going to happen in customs. So we brought around 7 bags with us personally, between the 3 of us, me and Allison and John. And then the drivers had tires shipped to them ahead of time, so they had their own equipment to get started and just in case, and kind of manage their own their racing. So we have a good deal of different tread patterns because we kind of knew that there would be something like this. Typically what guys do is normally when it's wet that you'll run a smaller pin tire, because the problem is, I think the natural reaction is people like to go large pin tires, but sometimes what happens is that you have too much grip and the traction rolling becomes a problem, and a lot of things, such as that, I guess when you guys raced on grass, AstroTurf, you do a lot of trimming of your spikes.
We do, yes.
To control the car and limit the steering and all that type of stuff, and I think that's kind of what happens when you get a lot of wet dirt, and then it's a bumpy track on top of that. So now you got the bumpy conditions to be concerned about. Now you got high grip to be concerned about. So I think most of the time this is one of the harder conditions to drive, because you got a lot of traction to pull full throttle or a lot of throttle, but the car can only do so much in the rough stuff. So this is probably going to be one of the harder conditions the guys face just because of all that.
Well, I think that's some really good insight for you racers out there. If you listen to what he said, he's given advice on what might work better for you at your local track if you get into conditions like this.
Absolutely.
So you're saying smaller spikes perhaps. It could have anything to do with the fact that they'll hold less mud perhaps.
Well, the mud actually packs in the tire, and then it acts more like a smooth surface that's easy to drive, like in the turn. So what happens with the larger pins, it's nice because you get a lot of forward drive and grip because of the clean out, but sometimes what happens is you have too much traction, and now in the turns that affects you in a sort of a negative way. So you're trying to keep that balance between how much grip that you have and how easy it is to drive, and you're not flipping over and making mistakes. And obviously if you've got long races, 10-minute qualifiers, it makes a big difference. We had something like this happen a few years ago at the World Nationals. I think it was '09 in Colorado. Yeah, I mean, the weather was pretty nice, a little windy. All of a sudden before the mains, they ran the semifinals. All of a sudden before the mains, rainstorm. And everybody, kind of went different directions with tires and all that type of thing. I think Tebow ended up winning both classes. He chose like a really small pin tire, and the track maybe wasn't quite this wet, but it was very wet. So it was also closer to the evening, so that's something to keep in mind, as we're kind of running this race this weekend.
Okay, now I know I've been looking around the pits quite a bit and seeing what they're doing. They often put a hole straight through the tire and the wheel, or is it just the tire?
Well, a lot of the wheels have holes already in them.
Yeah.
Some of them are like sort of a half imprinted hole, which means you can kind of decide for yourself whether you want to add a hole or not have the hole. But I think what ends up happening is you know, what ends up happening with the wheel and the tire is so many people, when you get in the wet conditions, sometimes the water can actually stay inside,
yes.
and you really want it to get out. So I think lots of times that's where sort of this hole on the outside have come from, is they want to, you know, get all the water and stuff out of the tires. You know, my thing normally when I see people at tracks, sometimes they over clean all their stuff.
Right.
You know, they soak it, they get out there and they have a situation where, you know, they might have an air compressor and they can blow the tires off, and they like to run them up at high RPMs, but you know, I don't think that's really the thing you want to do when you're cleaning your tires, because you're destroying the foams, you're like over expanding the tires. So I think you want to kind of limit your cleaning techniques to just the basics, not over soaking them or getting too crazy with how you're, you know, preparing them for the next race. So when I race locally, I only wash, you know, occasionally if it's better conditions. Lots of times I just brush them off and clean up the sidewalls and go, because I think that's the best for, you know, most conditions. That's my preference.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We will definitely be speaking to you a bit more throughout the weekend, or the week indeed, I'll get that right eventually. The track's going to change, conditions are going to change, everyone's got a different opinion here. It is set to be the biggest race ever, full stop, in rated control cars. And LiveRC are very appreciative of your help to get us here to bring this to you guys out there.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Thanks.